morning, everybody. Welcome to Primetime at the BU Library. Primetime at BU Library's mission is to encourage lifelong learning beyond the classroom for faculty, students, and staff through presentations, which are a collaboration of many different offices on campus with the Friends of the BU Library. On Thursday of this week, Jay Rasmussen will continue his Talk About Teaching series with engaging learners during the lecture process. The Talk About Teaching series isn't just restricted to faculty. Anyone who is interested is welcome. Also on Thursday, our office, the International Studies office, has our photo essay contest unveiling. So if you're interested in seeing photos from around the world taken by Bethel students, we'll have that in the CC Lounge during chapel time. Also in the library, tomorrow, we have the Your Life in Peeps contest. If you would like to create a diorama of your life at Bethel using Easter peeps, that'd be great. It's here in the library from 9 to 11.
What? 9 a.m. to 11.
9 a.m. to 11 p.m., so all day. And today we welcome Taylor Rafferty and Emilie Audorff with a presentation about their time in Segovia, Spain.
Well, I am Taylor.
And I'm Emily.
And we're going to start by talking about Spanish cuisine.
All right, so one of the pretty big differences, probably one of the biggest for me, was the meal times in Spain. And some of you might be familiar with this, but it's pretty different than here. So in the morning you're going to have your breakfast, and we said that it's normally around 10 a.m., but this can flux depending on if you work in the morning, what time you would work. Like some of our host moms had to get up and go to work, so they'd eat breakfast in the morning, but my mom worked at a school, and they would get like about a half an hour break where they would go and get coffee and like have a croissant, or another big thing was like little cookie cracker type things to eat that you could dip in like hot chocolate. So that was pretty common. And then lunch was from 2 to 4 p.m. and it's the biggest meal of the day. And all of the stores and businesses close during the siesta time. So you'd eat lunch anywhere from like 2. We usually eat at like 2:30 every day, and you'd get like you'd get like a salad or soup or something, and then you would get your main portion, which would be like meat or whatever that would be, and then you'd have your dessert. But your dessert is not your typical like cookie cake thing. You would eat fruit or yogurt. So every day after a meal, I had a pear as a dessert, so much healthier. And then dinner would be around 9, even 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. And this is just like a lighter meal with like a sandwich or a hamburger, like soup, bread, that kind of stuff. So just not the main meal of the day, and obviously much, much later.
Okay, one thing that is also different about Spanish culture is the little stores that they have. There are still grocery stores in Spain, but generally you would shop for like packaged goods at grocery stores and not your fresher produce. So a couple examples would be like the fruiteria or the panaderia. There's also like pastelerias, which are my favorite because they're like desserts and chocolates. So this, the people there normally go shopping every day or every other day, so they keep their food fresh. And again, it's a Mediterranean diet, so there's a lot of seafood, a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, and just fresher foods in general.
Okay, and then a huge part of their culture is tapas and or pinchos, and this is what we would do quite a bit as friends. We would go usually after we had our afternoon class that finished up around 6. We didn't have dinner until 9, so we had a bunch of free time. So we either did tapas or pinchos, and basically if you go in and order a drink, so like usually it has to be a cold drink, then you get like a free little like appetizer or something that goes along with it. So it's just kind of a fun thing, and it's kind of like a good little like snack in between. One thing that's different about the Spain culture is that you don't have to tip, which is really nice because you just could put the correct change on with the bill and not have to worry about that. And then something that we did quite a bit, a lot of us, is there was a bar on the main street called Calle Real. called Desvan, and we would go there pretty frequently, and you could order like a huge plate of fries for like €4, and it was enough to split with like 2 or 3 people, and they put ketchup and mayo on, which is like an excellent combination. If you guys have never tried it, you have to, because I don't even like mayo, but I loved it. So we would go do that quite a bit, just because it was kind of a fun social thing. And we also had intercambios, which is where we had somebody from Spain, and then us and they would practice their English, and we would practice our Spanish with them. And so this is what we would usually do, was go out to a bar, get a drink, get pinchos or tapas, and then just chat. So
another very common thing to do is go out for chocolate caliente and churros. And for those of you who don't know the difference between hot chocolate and this is just like hot fudge in a cup, pretty much. And there is white chocolate that they'd have, or dark chocolate. So that was just a totally different like consistency. And then the fried churros to dip them in is a great midday snack.
all right, and then the last part that we're going to talk about with the food is just some more like traditional things. Paella, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. That's a picture of it. But basically, it's like a rice dish, and it can have meat, seafood, or veggies in it. My whole sister was a vegetarian, so we had, and I wasn't a big fan of like the seafood or the meat, so we always had vegetarian paella, and it was really, really good. Just like every vegetable just in with rice. But I know a lot of people ate it with seafood or sometimes meat as well. And then the second picture is a picture of something called cuchinillo. And we had a going away dinner like 2 days before we left, and we went to this restaurant in the town, and this was one of your options for dinner, and this is like really traditional of Spain, and it's literally they bring out these like baby pigs that they have roasted or cooked, and then there's not a picture of the guy, but there's this guy, the owner of the restaurant, and he reads this like story type thing from this like tablet, and then he takes a plate and then like crunches the baby pigs, and the reason of that is to show like the tenderness of the meat, that it can be like broken with a plate, and then they throw the plate on the ground, and then they just like cut them up and like serve it up to you, so like you just have no clue what part you're gonna get. I did not eat it, but some people did, and a lot of people really liked it. My host mom kept telling me it was very rich, like a very rich meat, and she kept telling me I wouldn't like it, so I shouldn't get it. But yeah, so it was really cool. But it was cool to like see the tradition and like to kind of like experience like the whole thing that went along with that. So.
Okay, one thing I did want to talk to you guys about is Spanish coffee. I found that the majority of my money was probably spent on coffee, considering that my family were not fans. So, coffee solo is a type of coffee that it's very strong, and it's just served in a small cup. Café con leche is probably the most common to order, and that is coffee diluted with hot milk, and that's generally served in a bigger cup, even though everything is smaller in Spain. Café cortado is coffee diluted with hot milk, but it's served in a small glass. And then Café Americano is Café Solo diluted with water, and that's served also in a big cup.
And something with that too is our Spain term advisor at Bethel, Donald Green, she told us in our meeting, she's like, factor in coffee money for every day. And I was kind of like, that's kind of like, why would you do that? But like, it's true. Like, you'll go out to coffee, or I don't drink coffee, so I would just get a Coca-Cola Light, but you will go out every day at least once, if not more than once, to get a drink. So it is very much a part of their culture, and like my host mom used to go out all the time just for that with her friends. So
yeah, and one thing is that during the day a lot of the bars are coffee shops, so it's kind of like one and the same, and then at night they'll turn into bars.
Okay, so then we wanted to talk about the nightlife a little bit, because it's very different than here. It everything is much later, being that you don't eat dinner until 9 o'clock, 9 or 10 at night. So you don't usually go out, if you're going to go out, till 11, 12, around there. Usually 11 on the weekdays, but on the weekends, at least 12 or later. Otherwise, there's going to be no one out. And so then this is a picture of some of us that went on the trip with, was someone's host sister and her friends, and we were out at a bar, and like Taylor said, they're like coffee shops in the days, and then they turn into bars at night, and you stay out until morning. Like, I think the latest I got home was 7 in the morning once, and that's just their culture. They stay out really late. The day that I left, we had to meet to go to Madrid, to go to the airport at 5:30 in the morning. My host sister wasn't even home yet from the night before. So that's just very much their culture. And the times when I would want to stay in or not go out, my host mom would say, "Why aren't you going out? Like, you need to go out." So they're really encouraging to get you out. And even if you say, "Oh, I came back at 2 in the morning," they're like, "Well, why did you come back so early?" So it's just it's very different. And in the beginning of the semester, it was really fun to go out and like be with the culture. Once we started to maybe get a little more homework, it was a little harder and you wanted to go to bed. But yeah, so it's just it's very different. And usually there's like a DJ in most of them, like a discoteca and dancing. Not all bars, they usually do music and stuff, but yeah, so the nightlife was really cool. It was very, very different from here. One of the guys that a friend I met in Spain, I stayed in contact with him when I got home, and he'd ask me if I went out while I was at home in the States, and I was like, no, we don't really do that here. But one thing that goes along with this is most people live in an apartment, and so it's just not a part of their culture to have people over. Some people were able to have a couple people over, but so really to hang out with your friends, to get to know people, you needed to go out to the bars. So that's what we would end up doing, and then everything was just that much later. So.
One thing I wanted to touch on was the language, and obviously some of you probably know the Castilian lisp, so everything is said with a th sound, like gracias, or there's a place called Alcazar, but it's pronounced Alcazar, so it's very heavy, and you'll notice that all over the place. Some chose to take up that accent, others chose to not, so it just depended on your preference. But one thing that really stuck out to me was vale, and that just means okay, but when I first got to Spain, I was saying like, okay, vale, all the time, so I thought that was pretty funny. My family did. They also use the term maja, which is not used in Latin American Spanish, and that is like a form of endearment, so you call someone that who is nice, and that's used all the time. In the streets, you'll hear a lot like, oye tío, and that's just like, hello friend, or, but it was confusing for us a little bit because tia and tío are aunt and uncle, so some of us were confused, like, why are you calling this person your same age your aunt? So it's interesting. Also in the streets of Segovia, and Segovia is just a very, very small town, and there's like cobblestone streets, and there are people walking all the time, so you'll hear hasta luego all the time, and that just means goodbye, or see you later. Guapo and guapa is also used quite a bit, and that is a form of endearment as well. That just means like beautiful. And whenever I left the house, my mom would be like, adios guapa, and so it's just like really nice to be able to hear that, because in this culture we're not as inclined to say like goodbye beautiful or whatever, so it's a nice confidence building thing. Another Spanish cultural tradition is the dos besos, and that was a little uncomfortable for me because I'm not a very touchy-feely person, and that's all the time with your Spanish sisters or your Spanish host mom. Like a lot of students just give kisses on both sides, and that's a normal way to greet one another. Buen provecho is kind of like bon appetit, so that's something that's said a lot before you eat. whether lunch or dinner. And one thing I thought, everything in Spain seems to just be a lot harsher when it's said. So when they answer the phone, it's like, dígame, it's like, what do you got to tell me, or something like that. And it's not like hello, you don't answer your phone like hola, and that's what I did all the time with my Spanish mom. She just thought that was a little crazy. So that was one difference. And then venga is also something that seems harsh to me, and it's just like, come here, like right now. I know Emily said her mom would always say venga, venga, and it just has this harsh tone to it. So
I just didn't like it because it felt like she was, or sometimes they'll say when you're talking on the phone and they want it, like kind of want to end the conversation, and so it's just kind of like okay, like my mom would just be like vale, venga, like I'd hear her. Sometimes she'd say it to me, and I just didn't like the way, yeah, because it just felt like she was trying to like get rid of me or something. But yeah, and then just even with the dos besos, like every time my host mom left the house, whether it was to go to work, shopping, whatever, she'd always come to my room and give me the 2 kisses. And even like when you meet somebody, like we would meet, like we had some Spanish friends and they would bring their guy friends there, and like that's just what you did, like you just gave them the 2 kisses. Well, the guys, they didn't, they usually just did more of a handshake type thing. But that was very different. But we were told on the bus when we were going from Madrid to Spain, or Madrid to Segovia, that's how our host family will greet us, and so not to be like taken aback from it. It's just like the culture. So.
And another thing I wanted to touch on is with like gracias and lo siento. That's like thank you and I'm sorry. And I found myself saying that all the time over there, just because in Minnesota I'm saying thank you and sorry all the time. And I don't know if it's like the Minnesota nice thing, but they think it's very strange to always be saying those things, and to, yeah, because it's just not a part of their culture to be that nice. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so then we just wanted to talk about 2 pretty important like structures or monuments that were in our town. This is the Roman aqueduct that was in the center of our town. This is a picture that one of the people on the trip took. Just gorgeous. It's just huge, and I got to walk by it every day on my way to school. Just really cool, something you never see here. So just a little bit about it. It was built in the 1st century, and it was used to carry all the water for the city. It's no longer being used for that, but it is still there and still preserved really well. And then just a quick little legend about it that we studied. The legend of the aqueduct is that there was a girl, and she'd have to carry her water carry her water to the village, and she just did not like to do this. She just thought it was a big pain. So the devil said that he would build her a structure for this, but she would have to trade her soul with him. So she made this agreement, and then after she made the agreement, she was like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? I don't want to sell my soul to the devil, that sort of a thing. But he had to have it done by the sunrise of the next day. Well, he had it almost all the way done, minus one little brick. So she kept her soul. They had the aqueduct. So that's just the legend we studied. I took a culture class over there, so we got to study the structures and everything, and that was just the legend that we learned. But just completely, just a beautiful thing, just something you would not see here.
This is Pathar, and so this is a castle, and supposedly one of the big to-dos about this, which Holly just told me this morning, is being put into question. But supposedly Disney used this to model his Cinderella castle. And I just felt so blessed because every single day I had a running route, and it just always took me by this ginormous castle. And it's just like, to have the opportunity to be running by a castle is just extraordinary. So that was really fun.
Okay, and then something that was really cool with our program, it was a Bethel program, so we went with Bethel students and as well as students from Concordia and Moorhead, but we got to go on a bunch of excursions, and it was all included in our package, what we were paying. So we went to Madrid for a weekend, we went to Barcelona for, I think 3 nights, 4 days, and as well as we went to southern Spain, Andalusia. We went to Cordoba, Granada, and Sevilla, I think for 4 nights, 5 days. And we stayed in the hotels, and we had money for food, and we got to go see all these sites. And it was just really cool to get to do some traveling, as well as we did a bunch of one-day excursions to cities around like Toledo, Salamanca, like cities like that, just kind of around Segovia. But one of the places in Granada, we went to La Alhambra, and it is a palace and fortress that was constructed during the mid-14th century. But it was just huge. Like, this is only a small portion of it. Like, this isn't even, it was just, there was gardens there. There was, of course, like the palace and the fortress. And it was just, it was huge. It was beautiful. It was a really long tour. It was like a 3-hour thing that we did. So I appreciated the beauty, but now I think being back, I wish I could go back now and appreciate it a little more now, the more that I know about it. But yeah, it was just really cool to go and see this huge.
And one thing about Granada is it's heavily influenced by the Islam, and so this is an Islamic palace. And then the one in Cordoba that we'll be showing later is also influenced by Islamic architecture. But first I wanted to talk about Sevilla, and this was my favorite city, I think, in all of Europe, actually, and it was just so precious. And this is the Plaza de Espana, and one thing that I wanted to note that Holly told me this morning as well was that well, I already knew this because I had been there, but there are, the quote is, "It is a visual representation of the entire nation in one spot." And so there are little plaques or like just memorials to every city. So we ended up taking one in Segovia, and so this is our group in front of the Segovia plaque. So that was fun.
All right, and then this is the mosque in Cordoba, and it started out as a pagan temple, and then it turned into a Christian church, and then it became a mosque, and now there's a cathedral on the inside. So it's kind of it's a mosque and a cathedral, and yeah, it was just really cool. This is like the architecture, once again, that was influenced by the Muslims quite a bit. We were only there for a couple of hours, so we didn't, just in Cordoba, we just stopped there just to see the mosque. But yeah, it was just really cool to see a mosque and a cathedral kind of put together in one. Okay, and this is a huge part of Spanish culture. This is actually Paul's picture. He's sitting in the front. Him and a couple of the guys actually got to go to a Real Madrid game, which I'm sure was just an awesome experience. But soccer is a huge sport in Spain. As you know, they were the World Cup winners this summer, so that was pretty cool. It would have been pretty cool to be there while that was happening. But something that I learned pretty quickly over there was the Real Madrid and the Barcelona teams are enemies, or whatever, I guess you could say. My whole sister lived in Madrid, but she would come stay with us. She brought her boyfriend, and he was from Madrid, and one day it was coming up to be the Madrid and Barcelona game, and I asked him if he liked Barcelona, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, no, like, I'm a Madrid fan, and that's how it is." And so I quickly learned that they were enemies, and you like one or the other. And then something for us, since not all of us got to go to a game, Ricardo, our director, he would always say, "Oh, if there's a Real Madrid game, you guys should go out to the bar and watch it." And he's like, even if you don't like soccer, it's just a social thing. You can go, and there's just a bunch of people in the bars watching them, and just time for us to spend together, kind of embracing the culture again. But yeah, it's huge over there. We'd watch it if there's a game on during dinner. We'd watch it during dinner. We would, all the guys in our group really like to go and watch games at the bar. Sometimes the girls would tag along, but yes, that was just really cool. I mean, soccer's not as big here, so it was cool to see that over there.
One thing I'm sure you're curious about is how we integrated our faith over in Spain. Spain is largely Catholic or Catholic roots, but not a lot of people are practicing. They just associate it by name. And so I think like 94% of Spain would say they're Catholic. And then the other 6% are Protestant denominations. And this is a picture of our church that we went to. It was incredible, actually, and I loved the faith community and the family that was presented to us there, such like welcoming hearts. And one thing about my experience was toward the end, the pastor and his wife had invited us to come out to go to a dinner at their house, and just being able to fellowship in your second language and feel like you knew the language finally, laughing and making jokes and sharing stories in your second language was just like incredible. And knowing that like despite the divides, like one day we're going to be able to come together and I can tell them in my first language or whatever language that what I had meant to say all along. And so I'm looking forward to that day, obviously, but it was just very cool to develop that family over there.
Okay, something else we wanted to talk about just quickly is the fiestas. There are a ton of fiestas in Spain. It seemed like we had every other day off because they're just all the time. Actually, Ricardo, our director on site, he was also the professor for 2 of our classes as well as he led all of our excursions and that kind of thing. He is from America originally, but has lived in Spain for probably longer than he's lived here. But I just remember one day in class we were trying to figure out when we could do, we had to do like interviews with him, and we had to keep pushing them back because there was all these holidays, and he was not a big fan of that because we couldn't get any of our work done, but we loved it, of course. So just a couple other things, Semana Santa, we weren't there, but that's like the big Easter week, and it's pretty big over there in Spain, so that'd be coming up here soon, and then Christmas, Navidad, and Dia de los Reyes, and that's just kind of like St. Nick's Day, but it's on January 6th over there, and there was 3 people from our group that got to stay over there for the holidays. You could take a J-term class over there, so they got to stay over there for Christmas and New Year's Eve. And then New Year's Eve, there is a tradition with grapes, and every time the clock strikes, put a grape in your mouth. So that's just kind of their tradition with that. And then San Frutos was something that we were over there, which is the Saint of Segovia. It was towards the end of October. And this is a picture of their, it was tradition to get this garlic soup, I think it was. And you paid €1, which is pretty cheap, and you got a ticket, and you got this cool bowl. You got to actually keep the bowl, and then the soup, and it had like, I can't remember, bread, garlic, egg, maybe, something like that. But I didn't think I would like it, but I really liked it. But it was really cool. And then there was something too with it was by the cathedral, and there was like the statue, and then there was a book, and like the page turned, and like, so it was just like this big fiesta, and like the whole town was there up in the Plaza Mayor, which was like the main part of the city, and so it was cool to like really take part of a cultural fiesta thing in our town.
All right, I wanted to go over a couple opportunities that we had over in Spain. This is a picture of me with a couple of my girls that I taught in school. This experience was just incredible, and I would highly recommend, if you are planning on studying abroad in another culture that does not have English as their first language, to become a part of teaching English as a second language. That is not my major, but I went for it anyways, and it was incredible. So the first day I got there, and I have this to thank for being in front of you now, because I'm not a public speaker. And I stood up there, and I just had all these discouraging thoughts in my head for whatever reason, saying, they're not going to understand you. They don't know English. You don't know Spanish. This is just going to fall apart. And a little girl came up to the front of a classroom with a little present that was wrapped in purple packaging. And I opened it up, and it was this tiny glass heart and 12 cents. And it was like, okay, from a child's perspective, like, I can do this. They're not thinking that I'm some crazy person. Like, they want to be a part of my life as I want to be a part of theirs. And they just really taught me how to be brave. And now I can hopefully hold on to that bravery now that I'm back in the States. Another opportunity I took a part of was volunteering at La Residencia, which is a nursing home. There's just a ton of free time over in Europe, so in case you want free time, go over to Europe. And this was a challenging experience for me. This is about the only woman who wasn't yelling. Because they are harsher with their words, and I didn't know Spanish, it was very intimidating, because at least with the children, they don't make you feel stupid. But these women were like yelling at me in Spanish because I don't know how to knit. And I don't know how to knit in English. So it was very difficult for me to try to learn to knit in Spanish. And thankfully this lady, Immaculata, was very patient with me and just had me listen to her story so I could improve my comprehension. So once I found a quiet, peaceful soul, I migrated toward her and away from the yelling ladies who were trying to make me knit. So.
All right, and I just wanted to talk about my homestay quick. We were just kind of, as we were making this presentation, just kind of reflecting on like what was like really significant to us, and mine was definitely my host family. This is a picture of my host mom, Encarnacion. She was wonderful, and I will never forget when we got off the bus after traveling for who knows how long. You know, we lost a whole night of sleep, and we got off the bus, and we were dropped off with our host families, and most of them don't know any English, and so Ricardo was just like, okay, Emily, Encarnacion, go. So here you are meeting your host mom or your host parents for the first time, and we just got in the car, and I mean, I'm exhausted because of all this traveling, and I don't like traveling, or like flying, I guess I should say. I like traveling, I like flying. So it was just a long day, and I just kind of trying to make as much small talk as I possibly could in the car, and brought me in the house and kind of like brought me to this tiny little room, and I just sat on my bed and I was like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I here? I probably started crying, I'm sure, because I missed my parents. But my relationship with my host mom grew so much. In the beginning, it was very, how's the weather out? Like, as I'm developing my Spanish, just couldn't communicate to her. She knew no English. I tried to teach her how to say the town I'm from Madrid. Tried to teach her how to say that, which is a hard word to say even if you know English, so that was kind of fun. But by the end, she was opening up to me about, she had gone through a divorce. She was telling me about that. We talked about my faith as compared to her faith. Told me about her family. She lost a lot of her brothers and sisters. So we really developed a pretty cool relationship while I was over there. And something that I went through while I was in Spain, my grandmother got really sick while I was in Spain. She is a diabetic, and she had got her blood sugar got up to over 1,000 and had almost died. And then she was in the hospital in some transitional care, and then she had a stroke. And this is all while I was in Spain. And so my family at home was going through quite a lot, and there was really nothing I could do. I would have killed more than anything to go home, but I knew that wasn't an option. So my host mom really became somebody that I could rely on. I told her kind of what was going on. She, from then on, when I first found out, told her every day she'd ask me how my grandma was. Just give me a hug, give me like words of encouragement that everything was going to be okay, telling me to enjoy my time here as well, worry about the family. But this just like really taught me to be independent and that I have to rely on God, because there was nothing I could do but pray in that situation. I wasn't there. It was just a really time of uncertainty, but My host mom was just so great and so reassuring. She really did become like a second mother to me during my time there.
And one thing I had learned from my host family is just the difference of loving through the love of Jesus and always having that given back, and it's generally a give and take relationship with pretty much whoever you meet at Bethel. And over in Spain, I was very challenged with my host family, and I am incredibly grateful that God placed me in that home, but there was a lot of questioning just with my host sisters. And one thing I really had to evaluate was how to share the love of Jesus without coming across as just overly religious or whatever label they wanted to put on me. And so I just found little ways to try to help out around the house, like just unloading the dishwasher, trying to clean, or whatever it was to make my mother's load a lot easier, because they were a very busy family. So I had to let go of this notion that love is conditional, and I learned really what unconditional love looks like, and I learned how to love without expectation of return, and how to love without scorekeeping, and how to love without an agenda. And so that was a very applicable lesson that I took back with me, and I know that will obviously be helpful as I venture out of Bethel in the next couple of years.
So yeah, that's just the end of our presentation. I think if you were to ask either of us about our experience abroad, it was probably one of the most significant in our life. I know it was the most important and significant things that I've done since the college. I love studying abroad. That's why I work in the study abroad office, because I think it's such a great opportunity that we should all take advantage of while we're at college. So we have just like a couple minutes, so if anyone has any questions for us, otherwise we can wrap it up.
What time did your classes start?
We had a couple classes that were morning classes. My culture class was about the worst time you could ever ask for. It was Monday morning at 9 to 10:15, and Friday night from 5:45 to 8. It was about the worst time slot for a class, possibly. But being that the nights don't start until midnight, I mean, I had plenty of time. But then we had some literature classes that were like 10 to, I think, 1:30. And then we'd all go home for lunch. And then Ricardo, our director, taught his classes from 4:15 to 5:45. So that was usually, most of us took a class from Ricardo, so it was after lunch, that's a pretty difficult time in the day. So it was tough, but.
Especially after a siesta.
Yeah.
So. Are there any questions you have about culture or anything else that interests you in Spain term? Because you're always welcome to come by the study abroad office. We both work there, so yeah. I think that's all we have for you guys.